Wrapping up the last section on the digging the human person, we'll talk about moral freedom first, even though it's listed second, and then move into the Imago Dei. This is fundamental for morality. There's nothing that we're going to be touching on in this course, whether it's some particular topics that you choose or the foundational ones that I'll present, where this isn't a factor. So if we're talking about economics, if we're talking about social justice issues, if we're talking about life issues or bioethics, if we're talking about marriage, if we're talking about human sexuality, including the homosexual person, I thought it would be a really good topic, love and intimacy. If we talk about love and intimacy, or if you choose that, this is all foundational for that. Yet it's one of those things that we probably know the least about. Or maybe we don't know the least about, but we don't feel confident articulating it. So if somebody were to approach us and say, what does it mean to be a human person? We would struggle, okay? So that's what we're trying to clear up a little bit here, add some insight. And we're going to start out by talking about freedom. Now, the interesting thing about freedom is there's another, we would call in philosophy, an idea. You know, freedom is something people have died for. So what is it? I mean, we have freedom, right, where we live in a country where we're not under imperial, or how we say, we're not under tyrannical rule. But is that the only notion of freedom that we have? So if somebody, and I have seen accounts of people who have been incarcerated, either in a prison in the United States or unjustly in another country for decades. And when they were released, they were asked about how are you going to enjoy your freedom, and they can make comments like, I've been free for a long time. Okay, so there must be something deeper here that we're trying to hit at. This notion of freedom that we're talking about, it determines our choices, our actions, our judgments, everything about morality. It determines our choices, our actions, our judgments, everything about morality. It's fundamental. And if we don't have a good grasp on this, we're going to have a difficult time trying to grasp our judgments, our actions, our choices, anything else about morality. So I'm going to show you two competing notions of freedom. They come by different names. We're just simply calling this one the modern notion of freedom. In other words, it might be the type of freedom that first comes to mind, the type of freedom that we're most likely to find in our culture. So under this modern notion, freedom then becomes a lack of restraint. In other words, freedom is really the same thing as autonomous. Like, what does the word autonomous mean? Does anybody here know? Yes? Yeah, self-governing, self-ruling. Perfect, right? So in other words, anything that limits that, so anything that restrains us takes away our freedom. So in that sense of the word, freedom is really a lack of restraint. So you might, if you think in terms of like the rules here at the school, why do guys have to wear ties? Why do girls have to wear skirts here? Why can't I do this? I'm tired of these, are all rules. You're starting to move in, even though those aren't all moral choices, right? They're just codes we have. But nonetheless, you're starting to move into, I'm not free to dress how I want, so you're identifying freedom with lack of restraint.
Oh, what was the very first line of
It determines your choices, your actions, your judgments, anything about morality. Okay, so in a modern notion of freedom, where it's a lack of restraint, the law really is an imposition from the outside, okay? In other words, these are rules that are placed on you from something or someone outside of you. So you would not see the stop sign as regulating traffic, but as something that the borough is imposing on you, restraining you from doing something that otherwise you'd prefer to do. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work through both of these, and then I'll ask you simply if you need me to repeat anything. If you don't understand it at that point, let me give you examples. If and after the examples you still don't understand, then let's try it. But most people get it once I give them examples. So to lack freedom then inherently means to not be able to do what you want. In a modern notion, freedom inherently then means that you are not able to do what you want to do. Mom told me I could use the car, but if I do, I have to have it home by this time. It's like a rule. She's not giving me enough freedom. It's not, I want to be able to stay out later. All right? That's our modern notion of freedom. Now think if this moves into social justice issues, sexuality, immigration, you name it. It starts to change the way we look at things. Okay, let me give you the opposing notion, which I will determine it to be an authentic notion of freedom. It's also often called the freedom of excellence. With this type of freedom, freedom is understood as being in line with our nature. Okay? Freedom is understood as being in line with our nature. I am not talking like the natural world, like what you see out in the natural world. I'm talking about determining what is the nature of the human person, him or herself. So this freedom is understood as being in line with that nature. So we're going to determine what our nature is, and then to be in line with it is to have excellence and to be free. This law follows the design of the man and governs him from the inside. This type of understanding of freedom governs us from the inside. It's not imposed on from the outside. It's what governs us and directs us from within. Now, I wish I would have put this into positive, because now I got to give you a double negative. It sounds awkward. To lack freedom then inherently means to not do that which you were designed to do. I know it sounds like a mouthful, but I'll explain it. And it sounds worse than the double negative. To lack freedom then inherently means to not be able to do that which you were designed to do. In other words, let me say it in a positive. Freedom is to do that which I'm designed to do. I find my design, I act within it, that's freedom. Freedom, here it's to lack freedom then inherently means to not do that which you were designed to do. Saying in the positive sense, freedom is the ability to do that which you were designed to do. Okay, now, I really think my example is going to clear it up. I know it sounds abstract, but does anybody need me to repeat anything before I give you examples? All right, you guys are good. All right, I'll give you 3 examples. 1, now, when you're 17 years old, unless there's some malady or health concerns are not great. In 20 to 30 years, okay, it could be a different story. So you go to the doctor for your checkup, and they're saying, look, your cholesterol's a little bit high, sugar's borderline. We're going to need you to watch what you're eating, eat the good foods, watch how much of the processed foods and fatty foods, and high sugar foods, and exercise a little bit. Okay, now if you're hearing that in the first understanding of freedom, you're thinking that these are simply rules that are limiting your choices. In other words, like, who's this doctor to tell me how I want to, what I should eat? Why can't I just eat what I want? Because for you, freedom is lack of restraint. Don't restrain me from eating whatever I want. But the doctor is going to try to appeal to the nature of your physiology. He's going to say, look, this isn't about, me imposing something on you. If you understand how the body processes foods and how exercise is important, then you'll realize that this is in line with the nature of your physiology. So your body is designed for you to eat well, and your body needs some exercise. This isn't from the outside, this is from the inside. That's one example. Another example is when my daughter, Nikki, who's 25 now, and she was, I guess, 12 maybe. I don't know who was popular then as a singer. I think Britney Spears was around then. My daughter had a good ear at the piano. She could sit down, and if she heard a melody on the radio, she could peck out the melody with 2 fingers, just with a couple tries. That's pretty good, right? So I saw some talent. I thought, we don't only have money to send to her to lessons, but I'll find it, right? Nikki, I want you to take lessons so you can really get better at this and be excellent. I don't want to take lessons. She just didn't want to take lessons. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go in a philosophical mode here, and use an example. I said, well, wouldn't you like to be able to freely play whatever you would like on that piano? I can already play whatever I like. Well, what do you mean? And she starts hitting the keys. I said, yeah, okay, but a toddler could do that, right? A toddler can stand on and just hit keys. So I picked something that was quite easy to play, and I said, here's Pachelbel's Canon in D major. Can you play that, please? No. I said, so you're not free to play it. Excellence would have let you play that. If you were able to train and read music, you would have a higher level of excellence and a higher level of freedom. So it's not a matter of me imposing anything on you. It's a matter of your freedom comes in the training and the excellence. Here's another concrete example that might be even easier for you. Who here takes care of the maintenance on their own car? All right. Every 3,000 to 4,000 miles, what are you supposed to do? Change the oil. Because that's what the manual says of the persons who built the car. So if you try to make the argument that nobody should be telling you what to do, that you'll change the oil when you feel like changing the oil, it's not, that might be an autonomy, that might be you showing no restraint, but you're also going to be a pedestrian, right? Because if you don't maintain levels on your oil and it gets down too low, you're going to get some tapping and God forbid the engine will seize. If you don't change it regularly, it's just simply not going to function how well it should. So only a fool would think that they're simply being told what to do. That manual is basically from the person who designed it saying, this is how you maintain the vehicle according to its design. So freedom of excellence, authentic freedom says, it's not a restraint on me. It's not an imposition from the outside for me to check my oil level regularly and to change it every 3,000 to 4,000 miles. That is simply me going in within the design of the car. Do you get the distinctions between authentic freedom and modern freedom? Okay, now just picture pushing this into human sexuality. Once we understand the design of the human person, we're going to see things that are in line with that freedom, and we're going to see things that look like freedom, but they're really just autonomous choices that are not good for us. It's the same difference, all right? Anyway, okay, you already have this slide, nothing new, so you shouldn't take any notes unless you need to fill in the gaps. I simply cut and pasted this from the previous, I guess from Friday, because I wanted to start with this before I went into a list of the Imago Dei. Just to rehash. What we look at with saying, okay, if I'm made in God's image, what does that mean? That means I have to have an understanding of anthropology, what the human person, and Christology, the study of Christ. I need to know these two things. All right? And if I'm going to separate one of those two, which is what secular world does, it's going to wind up with some deficient understanding of the human person. So the importance of the incarnation, remember I said that's the key to understanding who we are as human people. He came, and in his incarnation, he revealed man to himself. So he then becomes the model of manhood for us. Both of these, the notion and the imaging of Christ in man, links our morality with our ultimate fulfillment. So you can see how the freedom is going to play in there. If we see that the way that we live our lives and morality, if it's good for us, just like eating good food is good for our bodies, doing good and choosing a genuine good over a counterfeit good is good for us morally, that's directly tied to our human fulfillment. All right? Which then brings up this quote from Serves Pincers. He's a Dominican priest that wrote quite a bit on this. He says, if you still see the Catholic morality in terms of what's permitted and in terms of what's forbidden, even though that is true, that's secondary. You're missing it. So it'd be the same as saying the doctor has given me rules for my health. No, the doctor didn't give you rules for your health. He gave you things that will help you live healthy and flourish in your health. If you see, yeah, okay, but aren't certain things forbidden for me to eat? Well, yes. And yes, certain things are allowed, but those are secondary. Primarily, you're interested in how can these things line up with the nature of my physiology. All we're doing is saying, how does the things that we are putting forth for morality line up with our human fulfillment, all right? So we identify between genuine goods and counterfeit goods. So what then gets separated is our morality from that fulfillment. We don't see any sense of what does holiness mean? How does holiness lead to the fulfillment of the means of a human person? Because it seems like it really drags me down. It's actually an imposition on me. I'd rather go do what I want to do because we're still locked into a modern notion of freedom. What then man forfeits is any transcendent aspect of the human person. There's nothing outside of ourselves that we can reach to. So we're very closed in. Okay? All right. Now, the importance here of Imago Dei, it literally is going to give us two competing understandings of the human person. Now, I have labeled these two columns Catholic Church's understanding of the secular culture, but it's not exclusive to the Catholic Church. There's nothing that I'm going to show you in this column on the left that I cannot demonstrate to you by reason alone. one of my degrees is in philosophical anthropology. This is all I studied, was the human person from the points of reason. So when we talk about even the soul, people think, well, if you're an atheist, you can't believe in the soul. That's not true. If you're a materialist, you can't believe in the soul. But you can still be an atheist and believe that there are aspects of the human person that are not material, and that there are actually destinies outside of this world, even if they're unknown, right? So anyway, one last thing before I go into talking about rational. And this, maybe not any of you personally, but typically in the culture you get eyes rolling. And if the eyes don't roll, the mind, in our minds, if you could say the eyes in our mind roll back. When I say that the Catholic Church is an expert in the human person, people don't know quite how to take that. Now maybe I'm a theologian, I'm a Catholic school teacher, so I'm the cheerleader, what am I supposed to say? Somebody might think that. There is no other institution that has studied the human person as much as the Catholic Church for as long. Psychology certainly hasn't, okay? And psychology is really the study of the soul, came out of philosophy. The Catholic Church has been doing this for 2,000 years, and when they were doing it, they were using information, wisdom, and knowledge that came 300 years earlier. It's pretty consistent. I think they can speak to this. I know some people are cynical about that, but I'm pretty firm on my understanding. So first of all, we're rational. What does that mean? That means that I literally can make judgments. All right? I can choose things. It makes me responsible, but I have the ability to make judgments on things. Now, it'll be clear when I contrast this after I'm done running down this list. I also believe that I have free will, that I can still choose, just like our first parents, Adam and Eve, chose to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I can choose that also. I am not under constraint of other persons or other forces. This makes me entirely culpable. So if I choose something and I choose immorally, I can't say it's not my fault. I have no responsibility. No, you do. You have full responsibility. You chose. There are things that mitigate that, right? We're not going to talk about that now, but it's still my choice. I'm an incarnate being. I am not a soul within the body. I am not a body and a soul. I am a body-soul. I am an incarnate being. This is me. I'm Steve. The whole thing. I'm not in here. I can't put on somebody else's shell to still be me. This is me. Right? There's a whole field that we never will have the time even to brush called individuation. It says what makes, say, Casey different from me. What are the differences between us? It's nice to get into, but it's beyond this course and this level. But nonetheless, this is me. Now this is going to have ramifications with human sexuality especially. Okay? We'll talk about that another time. I am relational. It's not just that I like being around other people. I need that. In fact, my identity is tied in with my relations. Now, how might you show this philosophically? What is the purpose of language? Why do we have language? What do we do with it?
To communicate.
To communicate. Well, you don't need to communicate unless you are a relational being. And you cannot think without language. You can try it, but you can't. Which means there's something built within a human person that means we are relational. Part of our nature is relational in itself. Now, of course, this is all imaging God. We already know how the Trinity is relational. The Father, and the Son, and the love, the Holy Spirit. We can go on and tie that back together. But you can show this either with faith or with reason. Contingent. What does contingent mean? What does contingent mean? Come on, smarty pants.
Depends upon something.
Yeah. It's relying, depends on another thing, right? So we need not exist. You know, we are contingent beings in the universe. There's nothing necessity about us. So you think of this relationality and contingency, if we were to talk about social justice and immigration, and if we were to get into, say, like international trade, we would talk about a term known as solidarity, which is like an interdependence that we have on each other. And it's based on these aspects of the human person. And the last one I have up here, now when I put supernatural, I don't mean we're Superman. I mean we are supernaturally oriented, okay? So we all seek fulfillment. Some people seek it in food, sex, careers, marriage. Sometimes we go with it with our good aspects, with marriage and spirituality. but we are never fully satisfied in this world. So if I have this urge to be fulfilled, that means I should have the ability to fulfill it. And if it doesn't get fulfilled here, there must be some other place that can satisfy this, which means I'm really oriented towards something outside of this nature that I have. Okay, that would be an argument for it. All right. Now, remember I told you how the Catholic Church has high regard for the human person? Here's one of them. The secular culture is going to tell you that it's really your instincts. How many times have you heard, well, come on, they can't help it. I mean, if they're young, what are you supposed to do? It's hormones, come on. What do you expect? Well, they cheated. What do you expect? They had opportunity. Now, all those things might have a ring of truth to them because they seem like they're common sense to us. But the church steps in and says, you're not an animal. You have the ability to choose. We have a higher regard for you than that. We think you're a rational person. You can choose not to give in to your instincts. Right? I might have a hard time walking by like bread, like sweet bread. I love that, like panettone bread. But I don't have to cave in every single time. I can reason that this is not good for me. I'm not an animal, right? And I know I'm a human animal, but I'm a rational animal, okay? Rather than free will, they believe things are determined. So there is a lot to be said about genetics and epigenetics and influences that we have, but the church says, no, you never have lost that freedom. So when we hear arguments, and we won't get into them today, right? It could be homosexuality or anything. Well, if the person is born that way, right? If they're born with these inclinations, then who are we to say that they can't satisfy them? Well, okay, see, one, you have a poor understanding of freedom, and you also may have a premise that's not going to work for you. Because when we get into the homosexual person, we'll see, well, if your argument is if that a person is born that way, then they should be allowed to express whatever instincts that are determined within them, doesn't that go for everybody who's born that way? So if a person is born with a propensity for violence, or maybe even extramarital affairs, which it's not that precise, but a person, who takes risk, we still make judgments in the world. We don't allow everybody who's determined to go that route. Why? Because we believe that you still have an ability to choose. And by the way, if you are a dyed-in-the-wool atheist, you do not believe in free will. I mean, you might personally, but you haven't thought through it yet. And if you think that argument's shallow, go read something by Stephen Hawkins, and he'll tell you, you choose the apple and the orange, one of those simply because it's inherent in you, something in you has determined that, not you. You have a false sense of choice. The church says, no, you really do. We stand on the other side of that. The incarnate person, rather, we are inside. It's what's inside that counts. So here's the story. When my daughters were younger, they wanted to wear something that I didn't think was quite appropriate to wear to church. I said, you're not wearing that. Some things are a discussion, this isn't a discussion. They want to argue it. Okay, fine, argue it. I'm a philosopher, I love this kind of stuff. So what's your point? God doesn't care how we dress. Oh, okay, he's a nice guy. He doesn't care how you dress. That's very good. Let me ask you a question. Did you choose what to put on? Or did you just grab whatever out of the closet? Oh, we just grabbed whatever. We really didn't think about it. Also, there was no thought involved. No. Well, then perhaps I could pick out your clothes. How about if I do that? I'll pick out your clothes. Because obviously you're not thinking about it. Let me think about it. Well, all of a sudden then, they admitted, no, we thought about it somewhat. So you thought about it, yes. So I'll ask you a question now. Does God care how you think? Yes. And how you think had something to do with what you wore? Yes. So tell me again how he doesn't care about what you wear. Oh, yeah. So let's not pretend that the outside, how we present ourselves, has nothing to do. So like in human sexuality, you could be in one act that contradicts what you're thinking and saying. I love them, but the act doesn't show love, it shows use. But I love them inside. I mean, we split the individual in two because we have no other way to rationalize how we can be in an act. What we should be saying is, I don't really care. At least we're being intellectually honest. Relational, nothing really. It's independent. I want to get to the last one. Rather than contingent, the world often thinks we're self-sustaining. YOLO. Rather than supernaturally oriented, you only live once. Now, I'm not going to make fun of people who have goals in life to do things, right? Some people might say, I'd love to go to Rome, So we want to say, I want to go to Australia, I really like to go skiing here or there. There's nothing wrong with those things, okay? But the bucket list mentality, this is what I mean. I have to fit it all in. What is it you have to fit it all in before I die? Because on some level, you think fulfillment has to be here? In other words, if we really are designed to be in union with Christ and the Trinity, that's going to affect our goals somehow, some way. I'm not trying to make more of it than I should, but we have to be honest. So before you leave, just look at the two different understandings of your person. You're rational, able to make free choices and responsible for those choices. You are a whole being who must be relational and contingent and supernaturally oriented, opposed to the person who says, I'm governed by my instincts that are predetermined. What inside is what counts. I'm independent of others, self-sustaining, and I'm going to get it all in now. You're going to have two different trajectories that you will go on in life based on two different understandings of the human person. But any questions?